So where do we start? At the beginning, of course. And a novel is sometimes difficult to start. What do you start with? What scene should you begin with? What character? These are questions which, as a novelist, you are asking. And so we're going to examine the beginning, the start. Most novelists start in one of three ways. And they start with what excites them most. That could be the world, a voice, a scene, a conflict. We tend to pick out what has played on our mind, and that is what we are trying to capture. So the novel could begin with a scene. No outline, no detailed plan, just follow the energy. It could have a character and therefore a strong voice, a vivid scene that is in your head, and a what-if scenario that excites you, the novelist. Example of this would be Stephen King, who starts with a situation and writes to find out what happens. The novel could begin with an outline in which you begin by building the bones of the story. That could mean a summary or a beat sheet. It could maybe use a structure such as save the cat, or the hero must begin the journey. It could also be chapter by chapter, the outline. An example of this would be J.K. Rowling, who is famous for the Harry Potter series, who plotted out every book in detail, including timelines, subplots, every character, their history. This was of great value to, I'm sure, the screenwriters, to have this wealth of information to pull on. The novel could begin with a character. You create a complex, fascinating character, and once you know that character well, once you have flushed out the dynamics of that character so that you know how they would act and react in all situations and scenarios, you can begin with that. What does the character want? What's in their way? How will they change during this story? Many literary writers start here with a character. The plot emerges from generally an internal conflict. As an example, I'm going to draw on Michel De Montaigne, a particular favorite of mine. He was born February 28th in 1533 at the Chateau de Montaigne in southwestern France. His father was a wealthy merchant and a minor nobleman, and his mother was of Spanish descent. His father had a rather unorthodox and unconventional approach to education. He insisted that Montaigne was raised by a German tutor who spoke only Latin. Now, this became Montaigne's first language rather than French. And this was a part of his father's belief that a classical education should be deeply ingrained from childhood. As a result, Montaigne grew up a highly literate and deeply immersed child in Greek and Roman philosophy. After attending a prestigious Collège de Guyane in Bordeaux, he studied law and later held positions in Parliament and the regional court. Montaigne worked as a magistrate and as a courtier, but became disillusioned with public service. In 1571, at the age of 38, he retired to his family estate to live a life of contemplation and writing. This decision marked the beginning of his famous work, the Essays, which he revised and expanded on for the rest of his life. Despite his noble status, he was not overly concerned with wealth or power. He valued personal freedom and intellectual honesty, often challenging the rigid religious and social norms of that particular time. Montaigne's philosophy was rooted in moderation, tolerance, and a deep appreciation for life's uncertainties. Montaigne married in 1565, but their relationship seemed more practical than passionate. He rarely mentioned her in his writings, and their marriage was likely arranged for social and financial stability. They had 6 children, but only one daughter survived into adulthood. One of the most profound relationships in his life was his friendship with Etienne de la Bouteille, a fellow thinker and a magistrate. La Bouteille's early death in 1563 deeply affected Montaigne, and he later wrote about the intense bond that they shared, describing it as a perfect friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. Montaigne suffered from kidney stones, a condition that plagued him much of his life. This chronic illness led him to develop a philosophy of accepting life's unpredictability, and he often reflected on pain, mortality, and the importance of enjoying the present. Montaigne died at the age of 59, likely from complications related to his illness. His essays revolutionized personal writing. Unlike many philosophers of his time, he wrote not to teach, but to explore, making his thoughts very relatable and deeply human. His works influenced Shakespeare, René Descartes, Rousseau, and Nietzsche, and his ideas on skepticism, self-reflection, and tolerance remain relevant even to today. His essays came about as a deeply personal and innovative project born out of a desire for self-exploration and reflection during a time of political and social turmoil in 16th century France. So let's take a look at how Montaigne started. Obviously, retirement and reflection were an element, right? He decided to retire from public life at the age of 38, and he sought solitude and inward reflection because of experiences and feeling disillusioned. Grief and introspection, this was another motivator, right? His retirement followed the death of his close friend, and this loss profoundly affected him and contributed to his turn towards introspection and writing as a means of understanding grief, friendship, and mortality. Another factor, skepticism and humanism. This influenced many classical thinkers, and if we go back to the Greeks, you can see that Montaigne was highly schooled in the classics. He questioned certainty, dogma, and the reliability of reason. Another factor, innovative form. He termed these an essay, which in French means an attempt or a trial. And this experimental and non-systematic style was fresh and new. He used his essays as a way to try out ideas, explore contradictions, understand himself more through writing. And this was unprecedented at that particular time. Another influence was the political and religious chaos of that time, living during the French wars of religion. He was surrounded by violence and instability, and this context encouraged his emphasis on moderation. So Montaigne's work laid the foundation for the modern essay as a literary form and was groundbreaking in its honesty, subjectivity, and philosophical depth. I'm going to now look at different ways to start a novel in hopes that this will help you with your beginning. So a start, for example, could be shocking and have high stakes. So an example of this would be George Orwell's 1984, which began, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. It's a start that makes you stop and think. Why does it work? It's a relatively normal setting, right? April day, but it's twisted with something uncanny. The clocks were striking 13. This signals that the world is somehow off. Another example. You could start in the middle of action, for example. I'm going to use Stephen King's Gunslinger. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Now, why does this work? Well, it drops us into pursuit with no explanation. There's tension, there's mystery, and an urgency all at once. So, a good beginning. Let's take another example. A voice-driven character beginning. And I'm going to use The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where I was born. So why does this work? The voice is so strong, you instantly know the character's attitude, and it hooks you through that personality. Let's take another beginning, a philosophical beginning or a thought-provoking beginning. I'm going to use Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. So what does that convey? It starts with a universal truth that invites deeper reflection, setting up the theme of family and suffering. You could begin with the past, origin of life or the world, right? I'm going to use The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice. So this works because it sets a nostalgic tone. You feel you're being told a story that has weight and reflection. Let's take world building, which is immersive, right? To let you enter into this new world that they're going to reveal. And I'm going to use The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday, why does this work? It starts with a mundane event in a strange world, right? 111st immediately puts you into a place that is both familiar and fantastical. I would recommend that if you don't have Michel De Montaigne's essays, I would pick up a copy. He discusses life with such honesty and such intellectual vigor. It is, to this day, something that you will find as a novelist very inspirational into thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I do hope this video has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next. Otherwise, thank you and bye for now.